Good morning, everyone. I want to talk about the planetary emergency that we're in, farming practice and money. I'm mindful, it was mentioned at the beginning that a lot's changed in a year, not just about Brexit, but I'm mindful of the news that we've had in the last week, or couple of weeks. First of all, from the IPCC, that we are maybe within 12 years of failing to avoid irreversible climate change by not staying in 1.5 degrees temperature rise globally. And it seems to me, I won't be able to go into this, that agriculture is in the front line as having the potential to help us reverse that, although that's not widely understood. Secondly, the WWF report looking at the decline of nature and the central relationship with food production systems. And then, of course, the latest news about ocean warming, which exceeds all the worst predictions. So we are in the last chance saloon in terms of being able to address these planetary emergencies and leave our world fit for our children to inhabit. And I believe that farming and food systems are centrally important in the role that they can play in addressing these challenges. But if I ask myself the question, is it possible to farm in harmony with nature, to maintain the natural and human capital that we have the responsibility to steward on our own farms, and to address the changes I've just mentioned, and to be economically viable? I think the answer is no. There isn't a business case for achieving those objectives at the present time. And my story goes back to the 1970s when I'm in London. I moved back to the land in 73 and I set up a hopelessly idealistic rural community wanting to farm in a sustainable way. Very quickly decided that it wasn't possible in the current economic climate because the CAP, we joined the EU in 1975, and then the subsidies encouraged maximum production, and we were trying to farm in a sustainable way. We couldn't make it pay, so we had the bright idea of trying to write a prescription for the application of sustainable agricultural principles and take our story to the marketplace. And that was the story of the development of the organic market. And I now realize, all these years later, that we were treating the symptom, not the cause, because we were trying to put the whole of the difference between farming in a sustainable way and farming the way that most people have to farm, because they're following the best business case, you were following the best business case, onto a price premium. And you could describe the development of the organic market as tremendously successful because we've captured a 2% share of whatever it is today, or a failure because we failed to break through into the mainstream. And I'm concluding now that it's the latter, and that if we want to achieve the mainstream change in food systems which is necessary to avoid a breakdown of our planetary ecosystems, we have to tackle the primary problem, which is the absence of a business case for farming in a way which looks after our natural capital, which all farmers in this room would like to do, and to farm in harmony with nature, and to produce enough food to feed a peak population in a sustainable way. All of which I believe is possible from my own experience, because I'm now in my 45th year of trying to farm sustainably in West Wales. I've got a dairy herd, we make cheese, I'm milking tomorrow morning, and Dame Glenys Stacey, who's in charge of the regulatory review, put in charge by Michael Gove, is visiting our farm tomorrow morning. So I'm in the thick of it, and I know that from my own farming experience that it is possible to do this, but not to be economically viable. So what I want to talk about is what it would take to make my farming system economically viable for mainstream adoption, rather than my reassuringly expensive cheddar, which is about 3 times the price of what you can buy in Sainsbury's, keeping me in business along with my day job. And that's not as prescription for the wide-scale adoption of sustainable agriculture. So here is my suggestion. We need a post-Brexit policy package, which is based on a whole farm approach and area-based payments. I know that's a challenging thing to say because of the abolition of direct payments, but I think that the area-based baby is being thrown out with the bathwater of direct payments. We need farming systems which are across the whole of the farm, which are about farming practice, not greening the edges, and enable farmers across the whole of their managed area to adopt sustainable practices. And right now, I'm not sure that that's on the agenda. We need, to achieve that, we need a whole farm management agreement based on the outcome and linked to the incentives linked to an annual farm sustainability audit. And the annual farm sustainability audit is something that my organisation, the Sustainable Food Trust, has been working on. We believe that it should be possible to develop a harmonised framework for on-farm sustainability assessment using common categories and common metrics, just like we have in accounting protocols, to be applied not just in this country but throughout the world. And we could use that, picking up on what was something that was said earlier, as a way of ensuring that if there are imports produced to lower standards, we would cost the difference between our sustainable approach and the less sustainable imported approach, if that is the case, and use that as the basis for a tariff. That's a discussion perhaps we can pick up on. We need carrots and we need sticks to achieve this. The carrots would be the redirection of Pillar 1 payments, and hopefully most of it rewarded through an area-based payment, which already exists in the form of organic payments, but it could be widened, rather than stewardship payments for greening the edges of the farming systems that we have. And unless we have that, it's not going to be possible for farming systems to change and move to systems which restore soil carbon. We need sticks. We need, Michael goes on record as saying he believes in the polluter pays principle. Well, we need sticks, and this is maybe controversial, but I think we need to make farmers and land managers financially accountable for the economic impact of practices which are using at the moment, rightly, because it's the best business case, which cause damage to the environment and public health. The obvious case is the nitrogen fertiliser tax. Nitrogen fertiliser is cheaper, there's a good business case for using it, but for as long as that is the case, that will remain the predominant system of farming, and it will be impossible to switch to a farm which is based on rotational cropping with a fertility building phase to rebuild soil carbon, because it'd be more profitable to farm with nitrogen fertiliser. But if we made land managers financially responsible for the impact of the nitrogen on pollution, on public health, which has been well assessed by the European Nitrogen Assessment, we would tax nitrogen, and we tax nitrogen fertiliser in exactly relation to the damage it causes. It would wipe out the business case for its use, and more importantly, it would enable us as farmers to change to farming systems which build soil carbon. And we, as the farming community, the stewards of the soils of this country, are the only people in this country who can actually take CO2 out of the atmosphere and re-sequester it in our soils. And the biggest opportunity is not in Wales, where I farm, which is 90% grassland, but actually in the arable east. So if your farming systems went back into mixed farming with a fertility building phase of maybe 40, even 50% of the rotation, you could sequester vast amounts of soil carbon. But at the moment there isn't a business case for so doing, so we have to find a way to deal with that, and the polluter pays taxation is part of that. We can also use hybrids between carrots and sticks. This would be tax breaks, conditionality of receipt of the area-based payment in the transition period after Brexit. By the way, I have to say this, if Brexit occurs, which I hope it doesn't. What are the barriers? Barrier one. I'm not sure that DEF forget all of this stuff. I agree with what Neil said about the big vision from Michael Gove, but the question is it going to be made flesh in the post-agricultural bill policy package? It's still all to play for, but I fear that the fact that soil isn't really being mentioned very much, as I understand it, within DEFRA at the moment in terms of the implementation of the Agricultural Act in policy. That worries me. Soil ought to be at the heart of it, as I've just mentioned. I'm worried that the environment, the word environment, marginalises the wider public benefits which can come from agriculture as a society as a whole to merely stewardship around the edges, which is business as usual as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'm in receipt of Tir Gofal and now Glasteer payments. There's the Welsh equivalents of the stewardship scheme. Frankly, I don't like them. I'd rather farm in harmony with nature and allow the environmental benefits to come out of the farming system than to be paid to do this and that and the other around the edge of my farm. I want the payments to be linked to my whole farming practice, not the stewardship around the edges. Barrier two, lack of public understanding. We've had mentioned this from all the previous speakers. I'll focus on the vegans. I can understand the vegan protest vote. I think a lot of young people in particular are horrified a bit about industrial livestock production. But unfortunately, once again, their failure to understand the central role of ruminant animals, particularly beef and sheep, in maintaining the carbon sequestration during the fertility building phase of the crop rotations that I've described we need, means that the market for red meat and its depressed state is going to be a barrier for wider scale return to mixed farming. So we have to tackle this, and I think we have to tackle this issue by discussing things with vegans. I think we need to convert vegans back to an understanding that it's good to eat red meat from sustainable farming systems, mainly grass-fed, of course. And I believe that these young people who are vegans are intelligent people, and they can respond to this. So we needn't be angry with them. We can understand their feelings, but at the same time, we need to reach out to them and say, we have to do this, because if you think you can eat a vegan diet globally with this kind of farming systems that George Monbiot and others, and George, by the way, I profoundly disagree with him. He's been to my farm, he won't engage with me publicly. I'd love to have discussion. Bring him here next week and let's have it. Because George is fueling this trend into veganism through a fundamental misunderstanding of the centrally important role of livestock in sustainable farming systems. So there are lots of issues to address. I don't know what the budget is for all this in terms of engaging the public, but we just all have to do it. I think the public are intelligent, they're interested. You just mentioned the fact that everybody wants to talk about farming. They do. So we have to be honest with them, transparent with them, and discuss these issues, because unless they help us, we can't make the changes. And critically, government will not introduce the kind of measure that I've suggested. The last barrier, which is really back to the whole project that I've been involved with, organic farming. I once heard a farmer in a farmers' meeting that I was in back in, I think it was 2009. It was a meeting of organic farmers just before I left the Soil Association. Everybody was going around the room and introducing themselves, and he said, this guy said, everybody was an organic farmer. He said, I don't want to describe myself as an organic farmer. I'm a farmer. I'm a farmer who has chosen to use organic methods because I think it's the right thing to do. But I'm not separate from the rest of the farming community. And I think that I played my part unwittingly in polarising the farming community between those that are organic and those that aren't. And I think that's been a real barrier. And I think that if we understand that it's in our common interest to work in a more cohesive and collaborative way, we can bring about the political conditions which are necessary, because then only governments can introduce a lot of the changes that I've described to make a business case for truly sustainable agriculture. But we can do this. And, last words, we must do this. Because if it's true that agriculture is in the front line of addressing all the challenges I identified at the beginning, unless we do it, our children will not forgive us. Indeed, they won't have a planet that's fit to live on. So this is not about can we, this is about yes, we must do it.